Okay, so in this video, we're still vibing. We're vibing. We're gonna try and do some more vibe coding, and I've learned a couple other things now about what we can do with the Copilot. So here we have the ability with this. I kind of almost call it a frog, but I guess it's the two eyes are there, and that's the pilot hat. But anyway, looks like a frog to me, so we'll go with a frog. Looking at the frog here, and I can open the chat. I can do an editor inline chat, quick chat. So let's do editor inline chat. And now you've got the true prompt-based approach. So I cleaned up the HTML a little bit, just formatted some things, added some other things, which actually VS Code was more or less guiding me to do, which is good. These are good things to have, meta tags for the viewport and the character set. And if you look up here, doc type HTML and lang English or whatever language you're in. The lang attribute is important, right? So that's more standards compliant stuff, which is good. Now let's take a look further down, and in the other video we got as far as having the editor get added for us. The Quill library got brought in, and you can see here now things are rendering a little bit good. So, but they're still not, the best. Yeah, they're still not wonderful. So let's start talking to this now a little bit about some CSS. So let's ask Copilot and let's see if we can get some CSS. Please format the checkboxes with an Arial font and indent, I don't know, 10%. 10%. Let's see what happens. Now, interestingly enough, you can target different models here, which is intriguing. So that's another plus here. So let's take a look and see what happens here. It looks like you can also speak to it, a voice chat, and you can pick a particular extension. So if you recall from the prior video, this originally got started with me installing some beta package from Docusign. Okay, so now let's see what it's doing. All right, now this is intriguing. Is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing, but it's putting an inline style in there. Okay, now depending on who you talk to, the styles should be probably put into either internal style or an external style sheet. But I'm not here to get crazy about anything. Now, okay, if we accept it, we can say, yep, go ahead and do it. But I'm going to say, you know what? Please move this to an internal style tagging versus inline style attribute. Now, knowing how to phrase these things, I think is probably pretty smart. And here you go. So what did it do? It took the style off the attribute, which was that inline, and now it chose to put it in here. So I go back to, I still think it's important to understand the core constructs you're working with in a language, etc. Or let's accept this. Let's refresh it. There you go. There you go. Boom. Okay, let's look to format our request description. And one of the things we could look to do here is create a style. So let's go back to our editor inline chat, and let's create a new style for the editor label. Let's see if it understands that. Actually, let's try this differently. Let's do this. For the request description label, use the same style as the checkbox group. Let's see what it does with that. So we want to reuse here. We don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. No result. Please refine your input. Okay. Format the request description text with an Arial font. Let's see what that does. No results. Please refine your input, try again. So it really doesn't have a good hook for this. So how could we get that done. Well, you've already picked up on how to do that checkbox group here. Let's just add a class, and we can do that here. Please create a CSS class called description and set the font property to Arial. So now we're going to right click in here and we can format the document. So we see description. Now it looks like it slammed the 10% though. So we want to move that back up. And what you want to do here is you just want to put a class here. And it's too bad the IntelliSense doesn't pick up by this point to say, oh, here are your options to choose for your classes. That would be nice. But that might be in the future. So we'll just say description. So we're going to save this now, and we're going to pop over here, and there you go, request description. So this is coming along. This is definitely coming along. We are vibing, vibe coding. Now, related document ID, we really don't want to see that anymore. But let's say we want to keep it in the DOM, the document object model. Let's go back up to Froggy here, and we'll say, hey, Froggy. So Control I. Puts you into inline chat mode. So let's do this. Let's say please hide the div that has the related document ID using a CSS style. Let's see what it does there. Please hide the div. Okay, there you go. Display none. Yep. That'll work. So let's go ahead and accept that here. This back here, we'll go ahead and accept it. And now what you're going to see is the div that we have here for display non-related ID. Now it looks like it recreated it for some reason. Now this is probably an error on my part, I'm guessing, but it redid the code from above. We don't want that, right? We want to basically we want to cut that, and we want to bring that up here and replace it. So that's interesting. So your mileage is going to vary. You know, opinions vary, your mileage is going to vary. But now, if we refresh over here, you're going to see that that's gone. Now we still want this in the document object model because we may need to manipulate it. We may need to use it in certain ways. Now, because it's coming off of the params from the URL, the query string, yeah, you're always going to have it because it's in the query string, but you never know. And you might need to write it to local storage. So there's other things here that we think of. Here again, having some knowledge of what the technology can do for you. But I'm thinking with Froggy here, you can try to hack your way through it and see what it does. You know, that's a thought. Okay, so we've got the div checkbox group that's indented. Let's go over here and let's go back to Froggy and let's say Control I. Yep, inline. Please add a div and put in that div, please select one or more of the groups. So let's put this in quotes so it kind of has a literal sense to it. Let's see if it does it. And sometimes probably just typing it in would be easier, which again, but it just did it. So we're good, we're gonna accept it. And because my cursor was where it is, Copilot says, hey, you must want it there. And yeah, for the most part I do, so that's cool. Let's format our document, we're looking okay. Let's save it, let's refresh it. And now please select one or more of the groups. Now, what's our issue there? We really don't have a good consistency with our font, right? So instead of just calling this description, all right, let's try this. This will be interesting. So this is one of the things that I was hoping this stuff can do for us. Let's say, please rename the class, the CSS class name dot description to dot font family. and replace all instances in the HTML class attribute. Again, let's see if this understands it. And there it goes. They're called font family. It didn't replace description, and it did not do the second part of it. So that's interesting. And I'm using the proper terminology here. So if you kind of were just hacking away at this, it might not be what you want. But so that created a class font family, and that still has description. So let's get rid of that. But let's go back and let's say, hey, please find class equals description. You can also do this with just a simple replace. And replace with class equals font family. Okay, because that's what we're really, that was the second part of the ask here. And let's see, that didn't do it. So I want it to come down here, and I want it to just put font family in there. Okay, so we'll close this. We're not going to accept that. And then what we can do here is on this div, we can put a class, and that equals, well, now that's nice. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Now that's what I want. I really want it to just give me that, and I'm good. So we'll escape after that. That looks great. And let's hit a refresh over here. Okay, coming together. Now as we interact with this, we're good. We can check as many boxes as we want. That's fine. One of the things from our diagram is, hey, we want to make sure those, at least one checkbox is checked. Okay, so this is now starting to talk about validation. This is validation for purposes of your form. Okay, so let's talk about how we could do that with the AI. So let's go back to our visual. Okay, and let's go into our script block, or you know what, let's start up here. Let's see what it does. I'm kind of thinking that it wants you to tell it where to put it positionally, but let's do this for a test. So we're gonna go back to our bot, and we're gonna say, please create some JavaScript. Well, please create, I'm not gonna tell it what exactly to do. Please create validation so that at least one checkbox is always checked by the user. Let's see what it does. Okay, so it's putting a script block in. Here you go. Now, again, where the cursor is located, that's where it's doing this. All right, so let's accept this for now. And we don't want this script here. All right, we really want this script. And it's funny how it put the end tag here erroneously when it has an end tag here correct. So that's another little twist, little thing. You always got to be looking. You definitely want to be looking to see what's going on. So we're going to take this guy here, and we're going to go back into our script block here, and we'll paste it after. So here's our original script block, yeah, and here's the script block now that the AI has generated. And we'll format it, but let's see how this works. So let's see how this works, and let's do this. Let's go back and say, okay, you know, I'm new to programming. Let's say I'm new to programming. Please explain the below JavaScript. Let's see what it does. Let's see what it gets us, and if it can put it in terms that we have an ability to understand. It's thinking. Okay, well, while it's thinking, basically the function that got created here is when the page is fully loaded. That's what DOM content loaded means. And what it's doing now is it's using a query selector. It means it reaches in, and with this actual selector syntax, which by the way is CSS selector syntax, it says, give me all the input tags that have a name of request groups. What does that do? Well, it basically puts it into an array, or in this case, a node list of elements. I consider it to be an array. It's a collection. It's more than one that gets returned. That declares this as the container. Now you've got your button where it says, hey, go ahead and get this element by ID. There's really three ways you can go and get something in the DOM. There's the selector all, There's a query selector, which gets an individual node. And then there's get element by ID. There's also get by class name, I think. But generally, you're going to want to use query selector, okay? Or query selector all if you're getting kind of all the same group of things. Right. Then what we do is we add an event listener. What does that mean? Well, it says, well, when you click this, we're going to listen for the click. So it's basically kind of like a dog that's panting for a treat. And that dog is waiting for something to send the treat its way. Well, that treat is a click. And then the dog will consume, eat the treat. Well, that's what this code does. It's in memory, it's listening, it's panting, it's waiting for that click event. And when that click event happens, it'll fire the function within it. So this is now saying, okay, we're going to take all these checkboxes and we are going to basically look for one of them to be checked. And that's the property on a checkbox, by the way. If you wanted to default one of these checkboxes to be that, you just go up here in the HTML and you type in checked. That's the actual keyword, and that would do that for you. All right, so while this keeps going, I don't think it's even worth waiting, but I'll just finish this up. Right, so after this basically loops through it to see if one of those is checked. Now, I'm not a fan of terse code. Terse meaning it's really truncated. What is going on here? It's effectively a for loop. If you really must know, and I think you should, let's put the whole for loop in. So that's what this little ditty here is doing, but they've added some new ways to work with collections, and this array from is one of those ways. And what it basically is doing is it's putting a loop, although you don't get to see the loop, which I like to look at. And it says, hey, you know, we're going to go through all these checkboxes for you, and we're going to test if a checkbox is checked. I think this is really terse. I'm not a fan of this. This is a much simpler, more intelligible thing. It's what I've seen since the 90s of how to do that. And maybe for other folks, they like it this way. Cool. It's one line. I got less lines of code. Yeah, well, who's going to pick this up? That's the thing about code. It's a conversation. And you want to make sure that the future you or the future person that has to pick up your code has a clue of what you're doing. So in this case, we're going to loop through the collection, the nodes. Those are the checkboxes. And it's kind of speaking to you, the code. It says, oh, you're going to go from 0 to whatever the number goes, but oh, it's going to be less than the full length of all those nodes. Yep. So you're basically going 0, 1, 2. And we're going to now check if checkboxes sub the number is checked. That's what you're checking for. Oh, and if it is, then we're going to do what? Well, we're going to basically put this alert out. All right. So that's what this other code was doing. I'm not a fan of it because I think it's terse. Terse meaning it's got a lot of things going on. Now, if you know all the methods and you memorized all that, cool beans, more power to you. I'm not that smart, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go something real simple here. And the ePrevent default, you want to keep that because, as it says, it prevents the person from actually doing this activity. So you say, well, wait, that's not right. You said if one is checked, you should be okay. Right. What we want to do is we want to wait for the loop to finish, and then we will check it. So we'll back this out. And we are going to just set a variable, and we'll just do a let here. And then we can say checkbox selected. And we'll set it equal to false just to declare it. Okay. So we'll leave that there. We'll format it. We'll put it in. And now what we're going to want to do here is we're just going to set it to true. And that's going to equal true. And then we can hit a break, which is smart. Why do you have to keep looping? If the first one's checked, you're done. You're good. Get out of there, right? Now that's the IntelliSense coming through. That's a good practice. You're not doing unnecessary loops. What if you had 5,000 checkboxes? Well, the first one you want to hit, you want to know you're good. It's that simple. But again, depending on who you are, you can say, oh, that's the one we should really use. That's the way it should be. I don't get religion about this stuff. I really don't. So now what I'm going to do is say if checkbox selected equals, and equals is not equals. Equals is, oh, there you go, triple, and it said false. Look at that. So now there's a difference. Double equals is just testing for the condition, and triple equals is testing for the condition and the data type being correct. I think I got that correct. So that's what we're going to do. And now we're going to say, yep, you cannot go past, you shall not pass. And that's what it's done. It'll prevent it. So let's go ahead and we're going to keep this guy because we're using it here. We're using it here. We're using that here. Everything looks good. Let's save it. Let's refresh. Let's hit submit. Hey, please select at least one group. Okay. Now, if we were to look at this in the dev tools and we were to put blockers in our code, we would see that it would actually break. Let's go to sources. Let's open up our file. And what we will see here now is down towards the bottom, we can put a blocker in our code. And what's a blocker going to do? Well, the blocker is going to help us actually step through our code. This is a very nice feature. So let's go ahead and let's click submit again. And look, it stopped, right? It's paused in the debugger. It's a little trick for you. You write some code and you want to see what's going on. Yeah, just pop in here and hit your debugger and put a blocker in. So you're saying, okay, we're going to start at 0 and now we're going to walk through it. And we're looking at the length of the checkboxes. We've got 5. Okay, that's the full length. Now, arrays or collections start at 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But yet there are 5. That's why you start your counter at 0 and you do it minus the length. So you're going to basically go from 0 to 4. Once you hit 5, I want to be stopped. So you can keep hitting the play button and then that'll go through your loop and it says, okay, I triggered it. Now let's hit the first one because this is what I wanted to actually show. So we're going to hit our submit. It's going to trigger our event. We're going to step in and we're going to step into our code. You hit the down arrow to step into your code. If the position 0 is checked, and it is in this case, it's setting the value of the variable to true. But then the most important part is we're breaking out of the loop. So we're done here. We do not need and we do not want to continue to loop. So we just break out and now we can get past, and that message will now not appear because it's true. So a little tip and a trick there to help you understand, hey, you don't want to keep looping if something else is going, if it can be triggered and stopped. So this one will hit 2 times and then it'll stop. Okay, good stuff. So back to Froggy over on this side. Well, we've got now some of our validation going. We can consolidate our script tags just by doing this basically and deleting that. We'll do that in a sec. What's our next real step here? Well, let's return back to our visual. Okay, in our visual here, we've got the privacy request description. We've got one for tax. Now, whether we need multiples, well, let's just consider some things, but we do need a document type that we're going to put a value into and a request type that we're going to put a value into, and they're both supposed to not be visible. Now, we did do some of that already, didn't we? We did do some of that already. So let's go back over here. And as I'm learning, we need to put the location of the cursor into the actual document. So we're going to say, okay, right here. And now I want to invoke here the good old editor, Copilot, Froggy. And I'm going to say, please create, or yeah, I guess please is not totally necessary, but I like to do it. Please create a document type input that has a default value of LSR. Let's see what it does. Let's see if it puts the label and the input for us, and it does. And look at that. It added the class of font family. So this puppy comes out correct. And pretty interesting. So it also puts an ID for us in there. And okay, we'll accept that. And now we're going to go right below it. And we probably should have said to do both. Because why Why do I need to retype this? I should have done both. So now it's document type, document name. And what I want to say is please create, and I could have kept my prompt, copied it, and then just tweaked it, an input for, oh, I didn't do the hidden though. Okay, so we'll address that in a second. For request type, and I kept the literal, so it camel cased though, which is very nice. Camel casing is where the first letter is lowercase, and then the second word essentially is the uppercase. So if you look at the ID here, document type, it camel cased it for us, and that's a good standard to follow when you do your IDs, is the lowercase first and then the uppercase. Please create an input for request type, and I'll say set the default value to company paper. Okay, and let's do that. All right, here again, it's setting it up exactly the same as before. Good to go. So we'll accept that, but they're not hidden, are they? Now, let's put our cursor up here. Let's bring back Froggy. And let's say, please use CSS to hide the document type and the request type inputs. Let's see what it does. Let's see if it puts it on the actual tags. Okay, so nice. I'm in the wrong location, of course, because I don't want these styles right here. I want them at the top of my document. But what did it do? Well, it had choices, and it's probably learned from me wanting to have an internal style sheet to say, look, we don't want to put a style attribute on this. That's not something this person wanted. So we're going to create a brand new style, and we're going to use, and this is CSS selector syntax, which you use again when you do a query selector or query selector all. But in this case, it would be a query selector because we're looking for the pound or the hash symbol. That means there's an ID out there. There's an ID that says document type. Okay, and let's actually show how this is going to look, because we're still going to have an issue, but let's show you first. Okay, so we'll close this. We got to get rid of the styles because we already got styles at the top. Keep your styles at the top. That's still permissible. That's the one thing that's actually stayed consistent over the decades, is people still put the styles up at the top. What has changed is where they want you to put the JavaScript. The JavaScript now is put it at the bottom. And the whole concept there is don't try to block the page loading, that type of jazz. Okay, so we've got now this guy, and that's there. Let's now switch back over to our actual form in the page over here. Let's save this and let's refresh. Now you still see the document type and the request type text though, don't you? So this really doesn't get us what we want. But what could we do? Well, and again, let's talk about this from a vibe coding perspective. What we could do is we could say down here, okay, you got the label. Let's do it this way. Let's do our Froggy. Please wrap the document type and the request type, oops. And I don't even know if it has to be perfectly this way, you know, with an outer div, and set the class of the div to, I guess we call it, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Hide content. Let's see what it does. Let's see if it's going to wrap that. Okay, it did, but it basically is adding and not removing. And it could be my problem in terms of not prompting it correctly. So I just accepted that, but now we have a dupe, right? We have a duplicate, and we don't want a duplicate. So let's get rid of this guy, because this is no longer what we need. Okay. All right. And then we've got now all of this inside hide content. So let's go back up here to the top markup here, and let's go right here and say Well, it's probably just easier just to type it, to be honest with you, gang. So let's just do this as a period, hide content. All right, and that already came up for us. That basically said, hey, we see this below, so we're gonna just bring it in. Font family, Arial sans serif. Well, I've already got the classes on those tags down here, so it's not something I would need to do. I could do it, sure. I could put it here and then remove that, but I think we'll just leave it at that. So we're gonna save it, and now that whole block is gone. That's what we want, but we still want to have it in the DOM, the document object model, and we still want to be able to mess with it. So very, very interesting stuff here. Hopefully this is showing some more vibe coding to build a web form that we're going to use within another application, the Docusign CLM. Thanks.